Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. Well, every single year, at the end of the year, I like to do a video reflecting on my year of watch collecting. Looking back through the past year, looking at watches, looking at watch-related things, looking at things to see what stood out to me and what I want to sort of summarize now in a video at the end of 2022. And this year, in 2022, looking back, there's actually two things that stand out to me. Firstly, there's a group of watches that I've bought, that I've experienced, that I absolutely love, that just really stand out to me. And I'm going to show them to you shortly. I'll only do it fairly quickly because it's not meant to be another state of the collection video. It's just a quick run through of the standouts in my collection as of 2022. But secondly, and more importantly, I want to talk about the lessons that I learned about watch collecting this year. And those lessons were learned from a couple of watches that I bought. In particular, this Hamilton Jazzmaster. This one really taught me some lessons about my own personal tastes in watches, as well as how to buy watches in the future. And those lessons I've actually been applying to my watch buying. And I think sharing those lessons with you now will actually help possibly you picking some really good watches up in 2023. So now in this section, I really wanted to say, hey, I've got 5 watches I want to share with you now. They are the standouts that I've bought in 2022. But I wasn't able to narrow it down to 5. So I'm actually going to say, here is the 9 watches that have stood out to me more than the others in my collection this year in 2022. Now, in no particular order, I'm going to show you the watches. As I said, I'm not going to go too much in depth with them. Some of them you've seen before, some of you haven't seen before. The ones you haven't seen before, there will be videos coming out next year in 2023. So first of all, let's start talking about this one here, the Hamilton Jazzmaster GMT Traveler 2. This watch has been an absolute standout for me this year, and it has surprised me. And as I said, this one is the one that actually taught me a few lessons about watches that I like and watches that I want to try and sort of look for in watches when I do buy them. Another one has been the Seiko Sumo. I love Seikos, I love Seiko Prospex watches, but this one really stood out to me. It stood out to me for value for money, but as well as I just really loved it. And an Aliexpress watch, well, yes it is. It's an Escapement Type B Flieger. This one has been one of my most worn watches this year, and it really sort of taught me how much I love pilot watches. And this one is a particularly good one at a very affordable price. Now, my Steinhardt Ocean Vintage Military watch, this is probably my most worn watch of the year. This is my go-to watch, a watch that I really like the look of, I like the quality of, it was really well priced, and it's just an easy watch to wear every single day. Jumping back to Aliexpress is my absolute favorite watch on Aliexpress, but has actually turned out to be one of my favorite watches. It's the Roland Pilot Turbine. This thing is incredible, and I've worn it so much. There will be a full review of this one coming out in the next couple of weeks or so. I really have been enjoying wearing this one so much that I really wanted to get my thoughts really together properly before I do a full in-depth review of it. Next on the list is my Glycine Combat Classic 40 Moon Phase. What a stunning watch. For the price that I paid, this thing is incredible. I love the size of it, I like the look of it, I like the complication of it, and it has a beautiful movement inside of it as well. And my new favorite micro brand is the Houtman Pilbara Rock. This watch is incredible, and it's incredible when it's put on my wrist because I like the look of it. I thought it looked cool, I thought it was interesting. I was glad that it was an Australian micro brand, but then when I put it on wrist, I just did not want to take it off. And as such, I've ended up wearing this one a lot. Now, 2 watches that you haven't actually seen on the channel yet, but they will be coming soon. And the most recent one that I've bought that has shocked me of how good it is the Christopher Ward C60 Trident Pro 300. I knew these watches were going to be good. I've wanted a Christopher Ward for some time, but I didn't realize they were going to be this good. This watch is impressive, and I can't wait to wear it more and more. And lastly is the Oris Tuxedo, or at least I call it the Oris Tuxedo. This is the best looking dress watch I've ever seen. I was so glad to be able to pick this one up. It certainly wasn't the cheapest watch. In fact, it was probably the most money I've ever spent on a watch, on a dress watch, which I don't actually end up wearing a huge amount, but it is so gorgeous and so good looking and in such good quality that it just absolutely had to come into my collection, and it had to be on this particular list. So there's the 9 watches that have really stood out to me. There's been plenty of others that I've absolutely loved. There's plenty of others that have stayed in my collection, but those ones, there's just something a little bit extra special about all of them. But now I want to talk about something that I think is even more important than these amazing watches that I've been able to purchase, that I've been able to wear myself and share with you guys. And it's the sort of 3 lessons that I've learned about watch collecting. And a lot of them were from this particular watch. So I'm going to use this one as a bit of an example to explain what I'm talking about. First lesson is to look outside the normal range. And as I said, it's actually easier to probably explain this by using this particular watch. So think about Hamilton watches. When I think about Hamilton watches, I was trying to get a Hamilton watch this year, but I was just thinking about field watches. I tend to think about field watches when I think about Hamilton watches, and I'll be a little bit surprised if you guys don't have the same sort of thoughts. You think Hamilton watches, great field watches. I want to own a Hamilton field watch. But I tried a couple of those and they were good. I really liked them, but I didn't really connect with them. And I hadn't really thought to look outside the sort of field watch range within Hamilton themselves. But then I saw this watch. And I wasn't specifically looking for a Hamilton when I saw this. I just saw it and thought, wow, that thing is absolutely amazing. I ended up being able to buy it, obviously, and it's turned out to be my favorite watch. And now I think about it and think, well, Hamilton, field watches, Hamilton sort of dressy, everyday sort of watch, which has some amazing features that I absolutely love. Well, I should be looking outside those ranges. I should be looking outside those sort of pathways that I seem to have stuck myself on by sort of narrowing myself onto those sort of just looking at field watches in Hamilton. So I'm going to apply that when I buy other watches. And the best sort of example that I've been able to do recently, and it's worked for me so well, was glycine. And that glycine that I've just shown you. When I think glycine, I think about those combat subs, and they're very good. I've heard really good things about them. And I've looked to buy one a few times. But last time I looked at the glycine brand, I thought, look outside the normal range, or look outside the range that I've been focusing on. And as soon as I did that, I saw that combat moon phase. And as I've shown you just then, it is one of my favorite watches from this year. So looking outside or broadening my sort of horizons in regards to brands, in regards to types of watches, is a really good idea. And I've ended up buying some amazing watches by doing that, by just sort of stepping back and sort of thinking, well, these watches are good within this brand. What else do they do? The second thing I've learned this year, this watch has partly been a part of that lesson. There's a few other watches that have really stood out to me as well that have taught me this lesson. And that is that watches at different price categories, doesn't matter what sort of price range it's in, there are watches within that price range that really stand head and shoulders above others in that range. And this is the kind of sort of watch when you get it in hand and you think, oh, I like this watch, I really like this watch. And then you think, how much is it? No, this can't only be that amount of money. This has to be more than that because it feels like a much more expensive watch. That's the kind of feeling that I'm talking about. This watch does it for me. I spent less than 1,000 Australian dollars on this, but brand new, it was around 2,000 Australian dollars. But when I handle this watch, I absolutely think that it is worth, or feels like it's worth, a lot more than $2,000. When I compare it against more expensive watches that I've experienced previously, this is better, or at least I like it more. So that's the kind of feeling that I'm looking for. That sort of watch that when I pick it up, I go, wow, how is this only this amount of money? That glycine moon phase, again, same thing. I got it in hand, thought, how is this only this amount of money? My Steinhardt military, that I thought, wow, how is this only this amount of money? And even that Seiko Sumo, I thought, wow, this is a great watch. Yes, it has a few Seiko-ish issues. However, it still feels like a much more expensive watch. And I've never really done that with Seiko before. And that's why when I did the full review of that Seiko Sumo, it was such a long review because it really was something rather special. And the last lesson that I've learned, lesson number 3, is probably a slightly more personal one, but I think it's a good one to sort of share as well. Coming back to that first thing of sort of broadening my horizons, it's trying different genres of watches. I think I've mentioned it a few times on the channel if you haven't watched those videos, but I'm talking about sort of, I've been sort of looking at different watches, trying different watches. Some have really appealed to me, like field watches. I really like the idea of field watches and I've tried some really nice ones this year, but I haven't really overly connected with any of them and I've ended up selling them. However, pilot watches, which is a watch sort of type that didn't really interest me, well, I've just sort of dipped my toe into that sort of realm of watches, and I've turned out that I absolutely love them. So I keep now buying more and more pilot watches. And as I do, I start to sort of understand what it is about the specific pilot watches that I like, and I'm sort of narrowing my focus into what I really love. So now I'm sort of going, wow, I like pilot watches. I wouldn't have thought that if you'd asked that 1 year ago to me. If you had said, hey James, do you like pilot watches? I would have said, they're okay. But now, if you say, James, do you like pilot watches? I'll go, yes, it's one of my favorite styles of watches. All right, guys, that's my 3 sort of lessons that I've learned this year. Maybe you can take something from that may help you sort of make some better decisions when you're making and buying watches next year. And those are the 9 watches that really stood out to me. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I do hope to see you in the next video and also in 2023.